It's time once again for another thrilling episode of Markout Radio. For the next hour, sit back, pull the stick out of your ass, and enjoy. Be warned though, smarks and internet know-it-alls will be offended, annoyed, and generally pissed off at what's about to happen to your ear holes. You've been warned. Now, Markout Radio.
Welcome back to Markout Radio Goes Nitro, episode 33, April 29, 1996, still at the Albany Civic Center in Albany, Georgia. Commentators are still Eric Bischoff, Bob the Brain Heenan, and Steve Mongo McMichael, as this week was not live. It was a pre-tape done last week, right after last week's Nitro went off the air. So, after last week burying the World Whining Federation for not being live, here we are pre-taped, because we're in Japan. Anyways, this is again in front of an unknown number of people. In fact, in Albany, Georgia, this is the Bermuda Triangle of stats for WCW. Every time that they've been here or would go here, it's a mystery as to how many people were actually in attendance or how many actually paid to be there. Now, from last week to this week, about a dozen people from the front row hard cam have left. You just see blue tops of chairs. Mullet Boy, that's standing next to Deborah McMichael, is still there, and everyone else is still mostly wearing what they wore last week. I mean, breaking down that fourth wall hardcore, right? Anyways, Nitro pulls a 2.1 to Raw's 2.9. I don't know if the word was out that this was a pre-tape. However, the ratings are not looking awesome, ladies and gents. They're not looking awesome at all. I mean, in fact, they'll lose the ratings war that isn't a war until Scott Hall actually comes and makes it a war at his first appearance. 6 weeks. 7 if you count Nitro that wasn't on. Not close ones like they had last week and the week before. They would skid into Hall, pulling the nose up on the Hogan-Sullivan-Bischoff booking team. All of the storylines were largely holding pattern bullshit until the NWO angle could start. And then everything that wasn't NWO would become NWO adjacent just to keep it relevant. But let's not jump the gun. We still have a few more weeks to go, and we're supposed to be building the Slamboree, which, by the way, was WCW's worst pay-per-view showing of 1996. It's almost like Bischoff was trying to make everything suck so the NWO would look even stronger when it came in, unlike his botched Hogan intro. Anyways, conspiracy theories aside, back to Nitro. The commentators were overly modulated at first, so maybe the A-Team production staff were deaf from Flair's end of night screaming just like a few minutes ago. They run down the card, including a match I'm actually looking forward to in a parking lot brawl. Now, last week we talked about no hardcore matches, but tonight we're getting a quote-unquote parking lot brawl, which sounds an awful lot like a hardcore match, except that it wasn't sold that way to Bischoff or Turner. But we'll get there, all right? First match of the night, a WCW World Tag Team title match. Luger and Sting defending against Harlem Heat and getting the big W. 10 minutes, 45 seconds. I gave that one 3 out of 5. First of all, we've got Mongo and Bischoff spending some time promoting the Lethal Lottery Battle Brawl, which is what that tag team schmoz is being called. Nothing really wrong with that, except that the tagline for the pay-per-view is Lethal Lottery, so one would think that the tag team gimmick would be Lethal Lottery in some way, shape, or form, but no, it's called the Battle Brawl is the tag team gimmick. The match itself, Luger and Sting versus Harlem Heat, was good. There's some of the usual tag team shenanigans, including an attempt by Jimmy Hart to throw in the towel, as he'd done on Saturday night a couple of times. Booker caught it. Apparently, it now has to hit the mat to count, or so Heenan explains anyways. Stevie Ray gets a hold of Hart and tosses him into the ring as Sting rolls up Booker for the 3. It definitely did not need to be this long. But they weren't going to give the time to the next tag match, and that's really the only match that needed the extra time. So, post-match, this match gets the Great White Hype Slam of the Week recap of Sting rolling up Booker for the 3. Like I said, it was all right. It's, not the greatest match I've ever seen these 4 in, but it's far from the worst either. After that, we get just a straight-up tag team match. The Steiner brothers defeat Fire and Ice, Ice Train, and Scott Flash Norton in 3 minutes, 25 seconds. Now, despite this being a shorter match than the tag team match that started off the show, this match was quite a bit better. But it didn't get a better score, and here's why. It wasn't long enough to actually tell the story. It was a very solid match with some very believable wrestling for the most part going on. There just wasn't enough time in it to tell the story that both teams needed. Now, it's not as though these guys can't go. Scott Norton's got great cardio, especially for a big boy. Ice Train moves like he's 200 pounds. And of course, Rick and Scott Steiner, fuck man, those guys can wrestle hour-long matches easy. So being forced to try to fit Fire and Ice, putting over Fire and Ice while keeping the Steiner brothers hot, while showing what individually all four men are capable of in 3 minutes, 25 seconds, I mean, I'm surprised it wasn't a fucking botch fest. That there was a point when Ice Train had Scott Steiner above his head and he was looking for the press, but he couldn't get the press up because he couldn't catch his wind. Because again, they're bigger guys going 100 miles an hour trying to get everything they can get in 3 minutes 25. So little things like that suffered as a result of it being such a short match. After that, we get a commercial break, and coming back from break, we get Gene on the ramp with a promo with Flair. Woman and Liz did change their outfits. Well, technically Liz put on a gold blazer, but whatever. Flair and Gene didn't change outfits. Woman can work the mic and Gene, but Liz, she's used to walking around and smiling a lot. Listen, again, she's a good valet, but on the mic, just stop it, man. Jesus fucking Christ. We don't need to hear her. All right, we don't. We got enough of her in the 80s. We heard everything she's going to say. The pinnacle of her speaking career was when she said, oh yeah, when Macho Man asked her to fucking marry him. All right, just move on. After this, we get a commercial break. Back from break, we get the first Glacier promo on Nitro. Very much a Mortal Kombat treatment here. I remember this worked on me as a kid. And then he debuted, and I was left looking for more. After this, we get a WCW Magazine promo. And then we start the parking lot brawl match in progress. Lord Steven Regal defeats the Belfast Bruiser in 6 minutes, 13 seconds. I gave it 4 out of 5 for a lot of different reasons. All right. It's not as though this was the greatest hardcore wrestling match in history. It's not. But that being said, this match was months in the planning. Turner was adamant that he didn't want hardcore matches on WCW television. So Regal and Finlay came up with this parking lot brawl gimmick as a compromise. It allowed them most of the fundamentals of a hardcore match, but in a more no-holds-barred setting that Turner was familiar and comfortable with. Now, don't forget, Turner signed off on the trailer brawl between Bunkhouse Buck and Dustin Rhodes being aired on WCW Saturday Night a few weeks after the pay-per-view that it was originally on aired. Anyways, the idea here was to get some cheap vehicles. 2 of them would be worked to death, to break apart and have, especially the hatchback, safe shatter glass installed. Overall, it was pretty successful first foray into a hardcore match, WCW style. And Turner would start to become more comfortable with the format based on this match. See, the reason Turner didn't like hardcore matches is he thought hardcore matches were ECW matches. Those are practically death matches by comparison. And can you imagine the fucking aneurysm that Ted Turner would have if he ever watched like a CZW pay-per-view or something like that? Holy shit. Anyways, like I said, we start with the match in progress, and there's a very cool spot very early on in the match where Finlay puts his foot through the worked backside window of the blue hatchback. Regal gets his face slammed into a 1/4 ton Isuzu that Bischoff calls a Hyundai. Whatever, he's never owned either one of those, so I get it. Finlay gets his head shoved into the passenger side window of that hatchback, and Mongo spoils the kayfabe by proclaiming that it's a great advertisement for fucking Shatterglass. I mean, Shatterglass is the copywritten trademark name of a certain kind of glass developed by a company in Hollywood that specializes in creating glass that shatters. It shatters into relatively large chunks that don't have sharp edges on them. So you can shatter this glass. If you ever watch Trailer Park Boys, the bottle kids use these things all the time. And the guys have been interviewed many times saying that those fucking bottles are $20 a pop. So I can only imagine what a window or 2 are going to cost. But still, As the name applies, it is glass that is meant to shatter without causing severe damage, which, by the way, Finlay puts his unprotected leg through one of the windows and doesn't come out with a bloody stump. So it's great. It's just fucking tackling dummy. Goddamn. Look, if you're going to be tough, you're not going to be smart. It's an either or proposition. Anyways. Heenan, during this match, got a lot of really horrible one-liners in there that were just the worst. The worst dad pun stuff. And, you know, dude, it made me laugh every single time. Now, we get a commercial break after this, followed by the WCW World Heavyweight title match from last week. The Giant, with Jimmy Hart, defeating Ric Flair with Miss Elizabeth and Woman at ringside in 5 minutes, 49 seconds. Frankly, the match was long enough to get the job done. I gave that one 3.5 out of 5. Everything starts off with Flair for flirting with Deborah McMichael again. And Mongo is starting to actually get, I don't know if it's a work. I think it's a work because you can sort of hear him smiling. I don't know. Maybe he's into swinging. I don't know. Bischoff fucks up, mentioning that the Giant is still swollen from last week's coffee spot, but flubs the line by almost saying earlier twice. Flair pulls off a foreign object from his trunks to lay out the Giant, locks him up in the figure four, and it looks like the Giant is done. But no. Giant sits up, Taker style, grabs Flair by the neck, just lifts him right up, choke slams the shit out of him, pins him for the easy 1, 2, 3. I mean, Flair hadn't even gotten out of the ring yet, but Gene is in the ring ready to do the promo. Fucking Johnny on the spot. He wants to get out and get a scotch on. Flair gets to go home with the women, according to Jimmy Hart, and Jimmy Hart gets to go home with a man. That was a little bit creepy.
All right.
Giant's promo was pretty much unintelligible, but it went over with the crowd, so bonus points there. Yes. We cut loose to the commentating team who wrap everything up and promote next week. Overall, this is a much better Nitro than last week. There are some spots there where it still suffered, and we still have 2 more Nitros before Slamboree, and but a handful of Nitros left before Scott Hall shows up to declare war. WCW versus WCW.
Well, that was an abortion of a show. Should the moon take you, check out markoutradio.com and leave a comment. You can also find links there to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Stitcher channels. You can even leave a voicemail on our Skype. Just click the links and share them.